So it's all about the enterprise sales. We've been doing this event for a good year now. This will actually be the 12th event that we've hosted. Since then, we've grown from 0 to close to 15, actually over 1,500 members. And it's just been really amazing, and just thank you for continuing to support this community as we grow and as we do new things as well. So you may have heard we started a sales development meetup for SDRs, inside sales folks, and that's been just an amazing kickoff that we did a couple weeks ago. We're also going to be starting this similar series up in Boston in the fall. So if you know folks, colleagues of yours that are up in Boston, please do share with them the enterprise sales meetup. But this also doesn't happen if we don't have some really great supporters and sponsors. So obviously I'm really just thankful for Fetch Recruiting. Where'd my clicker go? Bad presenter form. Thank you. Yeah, so I can actually remember our sponsors. Not that I don't remember them at all, but obviously they all have been super helpful in actually supporting some of the needs and also being an integral part of the community. Obviously, Fetch Recruiting has been extremely helpful. McLaughlin English, we have Boomset, who is so helpful in terms of providing the event check-in software. Bowery Capital, Paragon of just doing some amazing stuff around sales and marketing technologies and supporting that ecosystem. Actio, a great technology company that's up and coming. Workbench to provide this beautiful space. And obviously Workday, who's been helping out and helped out specifically around this meetup. And so just really thankful for them. Does my Workbench crew want to just say a few things?
Hello everyone, welcome to Workbench. We are the proud home of the Enterprise Sales Meetup, and we're so happy that you guys are here. Just for those of you who don't know, we are an enterprise tech growth accelerator. So if any of you have companies looking for space, please come talk to me. If you just have questions about Workbench, I will be around. Thanks.
I also just want to give a shout out to my friends over at BetterWorks. They're actually looking for some sales talent, both account exec and SDR here in New York City. There's a gentleman over here, you can just wave to him and he'll give you the details. Last but not least, we try to keep the space as clean and beautiful as possible, so please do take care of your litter and all that good stuff, and we can actually get started. Amazing. We have a really great just real powerhouse group today as a presenter and speakers. And at first I want to just actually introduce Ed. There you are. I want to introduce Ed, who he can introduce himself when he comes up, but did an amazing job just taking a company from 0 to 100 million, sold it to Johnson Controls, stayed there with Johnson as CEO, and had a lot of really great experiences around how to actually build a high-functioning, highly successful sales team. So I just want to give it up to Ed to kick us off.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Opening comment. The book on the front desk, The Startup Roadmap, is a precursor to the book called The Purpose is Profit, and it's about how to start a business, how to run a business, and how to make a profit. And the actual book will come out in January. This is kind of a precursor piece to give you a flavor of what that book will be about, a chance to kind of pass judgment on, is it worth spending time reading about what this guy thinks, okay? With that being said, I'm a salesperson from day one. When I was in college, folks were going to dental school and business school and lawyers and they said, but you're a natural salesman. That's what you are. And at that time, I really thought, wow, all these other folks are going to the professional school, and I'm the salesman. But as time went on, I accepted the role, and frankly, it changed my life. It laid the foundation for building a business that grew to an Inc. 500 company. We sold it to a Fortune 100, and it led to writing this book. And frankly, the more CEOs I got to know, the more I realized the majority of them are folks like yourself. They're salespeople. They're rainmakers. They make stuff happen. So I'm very excited to be here. Let me go to my first slide. So Mark said, you've got 10 minutes to open this group up. But the topic is easy. Just all you have to do is communicate how to scale your sales force in 10 minutes, which, as you can imagine, is very difficult. So what we have here is a Wordle, and on it lists everything that somebody does to scale their sales force. And we're going to talk about that in the panel. Realizing that I only have 10 minutes, I picked what I consider to be the big three. And the big three are cultivating the power of your customer force. Not your sales force, your customer force. Number two, hiring what I call lightning in a bottle. In effect, the Derek Jeter that's both a team player as well as somebody that will raise everyone's game. And then lastly, since the question was asked of me, and I believe in profit, and I believe in profit as a motivator, I'm going to communicate what I think motivation systems should be for salespeople. Go ahead. Cultivating the power of your sales force. Why did I pick that, your customer force? Why did I pick that first and foremost? 90% of the business that we captured over our 14-year life when we built and sold our company came from 3 customers. And some of the characteristics of these customers were, we had complete reciprocal trust. They almost knew what we were thinking. They trusted us. And you all know how hard that is to have with a customer. And when you have it, it is a beautiful thing. It causes wonderful things to happen. All the unproductive stuff gets pushed out of the way, and all the good stuff comes to the surface. These 3 customers exceeded ideal customer expectations. All of you know, what's the ideal customer? There's the one that buys my product a lot, doesn't put a lot of pressure on me on how much it costs, and gives me plenty of latitude during implementation to ensure it's successful. These folks derived pleasure from when we succeeded, which was very important. But the big thing is they were willing to testify to our partnerships. And the next couple of slides will talk to the way we captured these customers and locked them into position. So when I think of the best way to scale your sales force, the first thing that comes to my mind is, where did most of my sales come from? And most of my sales came from these 3 customers. United Technologies consumed all of our services, software, hard services, soft services, throughout all their business units: Carrier, Pratt & Whitney, Hamilton Sunstrand, Otis Elevator. And then, if you could just hold that one, I'll give you the tip when you do. And then they were willing to testify to our success. And that's the key. Because once you have an individual, this individual being Ron Zappilli, and he would stand up in front of the group and say, these folks really did save me $42 million. I mean, that is gold. And not only did he lock himself into position in saying it in advertising and in social media and in communicating the message across all platforms, but it has a different effect when a customer speaks to another customer, as you know, and says, what these guys are selling will save you money and will make you successful. So we had United Technologies as one example. Next, Computer Science Corporation is another, and next, Adecco Corporation. These ads were full-page color ads that ran in CFO magazine because our target customer was Fortune 500, C-suite, chief financial officers, and chief real estate executives. If the CFOs of large corporations would put themselves out on a limb and say they saved us real bucks, other CFOs wanted to know about it, and it really created a tremendous following, growing from these 3 customers to well over 100 customers, where we had exclusive 5-year contracts to do all of their work. So the first key for me in how to scale your sales force is to identify a customer where you have reciprocal trust, where they will testify to the contributions that you've made, and you can change your whole business model by identifying these folks and using them to lever your product sales. That's number 1. Good. Number 2, I refer to it as recruit and hire lightning in a bottle. I'll put the criteria down, but I was fortunate enough through our interviewing process to identify many more than these 3 folks. But in hiring these 3 people, Rick Bertaggi, Michael Casselo, Nick Wesley, everybody in our business sold. We had a saying, everybody sells. They landed large contracts, they changed our business model. They were unlocked to be able to create value. Michael Casselo created new business lines, and he introduced a whole new customer base. And Nick Wesley, West Coast operation, built 10 offices across the West Coast. And one of the keys, which I'll talk about as the 3rd point, is Nick said, I want to come on board and I want to be a contributor, but I want to have P&L responsibility. And I want to know at the end of the day exactly what I did, and I want to be accountable for that, and I want a piece of that. And that's the 3rd piece, which I'll talk about momentarily. But here's the criteria. Mark. Our top performers, highly competitive and disciplined. Discipline kind of sounds like an unfun word, but really the best are disciplined. They do the right things, they repeat the right steps, they use the systems, they use Salesforce automation, they understand the importance of the CRM system, of following up, of generating a high-quality proposal, of tailoring their proposal. They had an overwhelming desire to win. There was a point in our history where one of our competitors said, it was the finest compliment that I could ever get. They said, these guys seem to win every time. We had about a 50% close rate for a short period of time. It was kind of part of our culture. It was, if we're going to go into the game, we're going to come out the winner, or we're going to feel real bad. If we're not, we're going to learn a lot, and we're going to apply it the next time out. Routinely invested in preparation. I guess that's part of discipline. Enjoyed tailoring solutions. We gave our salespeople the flexibility. We gave them the standards, but we gave them room to adjust and create what the customer really wanted, as long as they operated within certain financial parameters. There were folks that liked being measured on results. It's interesting, when you interview and build a sales force, if you ask the question, do you like being measured on results? Because that's the way we do it here. It rules a lot of people out real quick, because it basically says you're going to be counted on both individually and as a team player to cause financial things to happen. They thrived under pressure. There were people that could operate individually as well as within a team. And when they were within a team, they liked getting the ball. They were not people that were shy about, they wanted the ball. They wanted to take the ball across the goal line. And lastly, they wanted pay for performance. They were not bashful about that. They knew that they could make more money that way, and they had more opportunity to be promoted within the organization if they were willing to say, pay me based on performance. Now, I'm not advocating no base salary and not a nice benefits package, but frankly, in our business, we had everybody on the same salary, including myself. And everybody had a profits interest, which is the next piece I'm going to talk to. And that profits interest was based on what you were able to bring across the goal line. So my last point. First, just to summarize, harness your customer force. Number 2, you gotta remember. Number 2, hire lightning in a bottle. Thank you. I'm not like that Texas governor, by the way. And the last point is leverage profit to ignite expansion. Now this really kind of gets into a place where some folks are comfortable and some aren't. We were very comfortable. We wanted everybody to share in the profit stream. We paid based on profits. So everybody had a base salary, and then they had a profits interest. And all our salespeople had, speaking openly, they had a 10% profits interest in everything that they did. And that 10% profits interest was not for 1 year, it was for the life of the contract. And our contract terms average 5 years. And if those customers bought more service lines, that 10% profits interest grew. So what was happening is they would have a base salary, and then they would have account number 1, ongoing profits interest, account number 2, account number 3, account number 10. And they were building a significant revenue stream, and it was in effect changing their life. But if we gave away 10% and their manager got a 10%, there was 80% in profit left to come back to the corporation to underwrite our growth and our expansion. It worked well. We never borrowed a dime. All of our growth was built off current cash flow. We operated in 5 countries, 40 offices, and we never borrowed a dime. And it's because everybody was a P&L manager, whether you were a salesperson or the sales manager or senior management, everybody had an interest in the outcome. And it literally changed the game for all of us. Go ahead. So a question, and show of hands, do you think salespeople are motivated about maximizing personal income? Of course. So the question I ask, go ahead. If so, then why not set up a system that maximizes the business income at the same time? In other words, if you get 10%, then the business gets 90%. And if you get 10%, that means that the salesperson who's selling, whatever they're selling, they're concerned about the middle line, the cost of pursuing the business, because if they're going to get paid off the bottom line, they're going to make damn sure there's some bottom line to be able to capture. I think most compensation models reset quote every year. We paid a percentage of profits for the life of the account. Many of the accounts lasted the whole duration of the company, 14 years before we sold it. A successful salesperson, as I mentioned, to build an annuity, and it underwrote a 40% compounded annual growth rate for the business. So it worked. Next slide. Another way we use profit, and this is my last point. If you're really scaling, you're thinking about geographic expansion and line of business expansion. And your greatest risk when you're growing your sales force or your business is that the folks that you hold accountable as your management team aren't concerned about your bottom line contribution. You're going to build yourself into a problem. And a lot of businesses face big challenges because of that. But if you motivate your geographic P&L managers and your line of business P&L managers with profit, not revenue, they're going to ensure that the business succeeds. If you can go back one more, and then this is it. Probably going past my time here. Couple things. This makes sense if securing new business is a primary responsibility for P&L managers. We created a culture that was a sales-driven culture and basically said everybody's responsible for sales. Even administrators could get a commission, the receptionist, we wanted to turn everybody into marketing our product. We had a great product, we were able to deliver the service, we built a nice clientele that referred our services to other clients, and we thought, let's allow everybody to make a piece of the pie if they can make a recommendation on how we can add a new account or expand an existing account. It makes sense if proximity to your customer is important. That was hugely important, and I think in many cases, most people, enterprise B2B sales, the ability to drive to your customer same day, not to have to fly across the country, so the customer can feel your presence on a regular diet. We had to be within a 2-hour drive of all of our customers. And I think that probably holds true for a lot of folks in this room too. The idea of, I'm gonna make a sales call from New York on somebody in San Diego, and I can't get back in front of them without spending a lot of money on short term. So we had to expand and grow where our customers were, and we had to be proximate to those customers. Lastly, is your leadership willing to extend trust by distributing certain levels of authority and judgment? And I think that's a key in scaling any business, is we knew we were better off if we built a business where we hired carefully and then we extended trust with our own personnel that they could make judgments that would enable the business to grow more quickly. So what happened? They became P&L managers. They were incentivized by profit. Number one, they were concerned about revenue growth. Number two, they were concerned about controlling the middle line, because number three, if there was no bottom line, they weren't going to make any money. So the big three, customer testimonial, harnessing your customer force, hiring lightning in a bottle, and using profit as an incentive or a lever to grow your business. Thanks very much. I hope I
to get settled here and do a little bit of arranging up here. So just give us a moment while we get settled. We've already had the pleasure of meeting Ed and talking about the 3 levers of growing a sales organization. So I want to be able to just introduce quickly our 2 other panelists. I'm going to give it up to Kiva first.
Hello, I'm Kiva Kolstein. I am the Chief Growth Officer of Percolate. Percolate, for those of you that don't know, is building a system of record for marketing where all of your marketing tasks can happen in one platform, in one place. More on that in a moment.
So that's a cool name, Kiva and Chief Growth Officer. Love that. So my name is Allison. I'm a Regional Sales Director with a company called Workday. I've been with them for about 1.5 years. Prior to that, I spent about 15 years with combined Oracle, PeopleSoft, and JD Edwards in the enterprise software space. So welcome and thank you.
And obviously Ed introduced himself. But yeah, I want to kick off with thinking about those 3 levers of building a high-performing sales organization, really thinking about growth. I want to talk about that first part around hiring. Right? We all have questions. I think there's a lot of people in this audience that are thinking, like, I got to hire a bunch of people. I know obviously 2 of the folks here on the panel are very interested in looking to build up their sales teams, and they can obviously talk a little bit more about that. But when you think about hiring lightning in a bottle, what's the method of madness that you have for trying to grow a sales team, particularly when you're trying to grow very quickly and trying to find that rare enterprise salesperson here in New York City?
We spend a lot of time thinking about attracting talent. How do you attract talent? How do you find the best from out there in industry, people who are not currently looking for a job, passive candidates we call them. And we have built a 16-person recruiting team to go out and aggressively target these people, places like this, using LinkedIn. But in terms of the interview process and how we try to find lightning in a bottle, we're looking for very specific things, and we spend a great deal of time during the interview process thinking about these things. So grit, passion, motor, a deep desire to learn, someone who's disciplined. And the way I think about discipline is, how does this person define productivity for themselves on a daily basis? But if you decompose your target as a sales professional out to its smallest component parts, so you know you've got $1 million target at the end of the year, and you know it takes 10 deals at $100,000 to achieve that $1 million target, and the ratio of proposals to deals is 3 to 1, and the ratio of meetings to proposals is 10 to 1. How far out can you take that decomposition of your target so that you know for yourself at the end of every single day how productive you've been if you've not closed the deal? When a candidate starts talking in that way, that gets me excited, right? That's discipline. That tells me that they have a really good idea for how to run a business. So I think intellectual curiosity, like you mentioned, and a deep desire to learn, right? In our space, the space marketing is changing so quickly as you move to mobile and global and a growing middle class. And what do these people read? How do they learn? How do they establish themselves as a thought leader so they earn the right to be a thought partner over time? So if they can communicate that kind of thing to me during the interview process, we're in pretty good shape.
So our organization, we hired over 1,000 people last year. We're in a rapid growth mode. And I firmly believe I'm always recruiting, I'm always networking, and I commend all of you for investing time here tonight to invest in your career and networking and learning about what other people are doing. So I think it's an ongoing process, to answer your question. Some of the best hires that I've brought on board, whether it be at Oracle or PeopleSoft or at Workday, are through my personal network. We have a team of recruiters also out working through LinkedIn and so on, trying to identify target candidates, but some of the best hires have come through personal network, personal connection, and I urge you all to continue to get out beyond just the social media and get face-to-face with people and network.
Can I have a comment? This is maybe a little, maybe a little controversial, but one of the things that we really like to do is, as much as possible, keep human resources at bay on hiring salespeople. And the reason why is the P&L manager have the responsibility to build the business. And sometimes HR could do a preliminary scanning, if you will, but the rubber met the road with the P&L manager. And as much as possible, we let them do a preliminary scanning, but then the folks that were responsible for causing new business to happen had the final say-so. And that's a huge sensitivity point for me.
Actually, thinking about, because you're all in 3 different places. You got high growth startup, post-growth, or post-IPO, still very rapidly growing SaaS company, and a company that went from 0 to 100 million pretty rapidly. How do you end up setting your objectives in terms of how many people hire, and how are you able to quickly fill that queue? Because obviously, a large part of your growth is incumbent upon being able to find enough of that talent to get them through your system.
Yeah, so I would argue to some extent that you separate recruiting and growth from HR, and they become 2 different functions. And you take your recruiters through the same kind of sales training process as you take your sales people. And it has to be intense, and they have to be able to articulate the value of the culture to employees and the value of the platform, in our case, to clients. Right? They have to be as good at articulating the vision for where this company is going as our sales professionals are. I go back to what I said earlier. You hire up a big recruiting team, a growth team, and go after it. You identify target profiles of people who you think would be right for that role. You look at this current pattern recognize, look at who's doing really well inside your company today, and sort of share that with the team of people, the entire organization. You mentioned referrals. How do you get your entire organization involved in the recruiting process? Talking to their personal, their friends, their colleagues, their former colleagues. How do you incentivize them to bring new people?
So kind of playing off of that, we incent our people. There's referral bonuses. So if somebody comes on board, we incent our people to find good people and refer them and bring them in. And if they're there for a period of 60 days, they earn a monetary award. In terms of your original question, I've fortunately been part of large enterprise where we've got a very large sales organization, and if we achieve and exceed our goals, which we plan to do every year, to continue to grow, you have to add people. So it's a planned growth, right? You set your target for your year, your revenue, your financial goal, you hit that and exceed that, and you grow by adding more sales folks.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, you start thinking about, oh, I'm hiring a lot of people, but now you also got to think about, well, how am I going to get them successful as soon as possible, right? Because there's a point in time where you got to have folks be productive. Is it 3 months, 6 months? Really depends on the business model. You know, what are your thoughts on terms of onboarding, getting reps up to speed quickly?
Nothing is more important. Attainment, ramp, nothing is more important. So in our case, we spend a great deal of time on the first 2 weeks, so it's a pretty intense, like Navy SEAL style training program. You walk in the door at Percolate, your first 2 days are with our HR team, introducing you to Percolate in general. Then then our training team, our sales effectiveness team takes over, and you're with them from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the next week and a half.
And when you get the 15-mile runs in?
Not at Percolate. Late at night, early in the morning. I think, so we do a couple things. So first, during the interview process, everyone grades all the candidates. So you get a grade based on curiosity, passion, grit, motor, intelligence, etc. And that's the responsibility of the interviewers. So we don't know a lot about you, but we're basing our grade on what we see. Then our sales effectiveness team takes over, and at the end of your 2 weeks of training, you get another grade against each of those same criteria. Then you go back into market, into your region, and your sales manager, sales director takes over responsibility for professional development and coaching. And there are milestones that we set for the next, 22 weeks. We have a 6-month ramp where every 2 weeks there's another set of things that you're responsible for doing, and another set of criteria that the director is responsible for measuring you against.
So you're doing kind of like, are you also doing like MBOs and?
Well, so everyone gets an MBO, but I'm talking more about sort of ramp expectations, right? Like, so there's the new hire training process, which happens in 2 weeks, and then there's continuing education. How do we train ramping sellers on new collateral that we're putting out? How do we train them on a tweaked deck or evolving demo? And so that's the responsibility of both the sales effectiveness team and their director.
Any thoughts, Ed?
I would just say that early on, we hired professional salespeople to do the industry, so we could assign them responsibility from the get-go. As the business grew and we started to bring on folks that didn't have industry experience or proven sales experience, we had a mentorship program, and then we introduced professional sales training. One of the most effective ones that I've found is Miller Hyman's strategic selling, conceptual selling, and tactical selling.
Ed, what do you do at Workday?
Sure. So I'm a firm believer of learning through field experience. Our organization, fortunately, given the size, we bring the onboarded person right into the field and try and get them to shadow reps right away, start hearing the talk, sitting in through demonstrations in the field, and then about 8 weeks in, we then send them off to a boot camp. So we have a virtual boot camp onboarding the first week to try and get them out in the field. The field manager is responsible for really mentoring that person, ensuring that their first 2 weeks they're shadowing different folks, whether it's a pre-sales consultant, an implementation person, a salesperson. So nothing like the school of hard knocks, if you will, where they've got someone.
Yeah, kind of like the old IBM model, right? Where you basically were, you're connected with a sales rep, a senior rep, but you basically shadowed them for months.
Not that old, so I don't know that model.
No, I don't know either. I rely on other people to tell me that one, but it's interesting. But on top of that, onboarding and training go hand in hand. There is a traditional onboarding, just getting people up to speed, setting up education. What about the training itself? I mean, what are you providing specifically around sales training? Because you're trying to find people. They may not necessarily be your perfect ideal fit. So you got to figure out ways of getting them up to speed not only on the solutions to provide, the culture of the company, the overall markets that you're in, but also just sales tactics, sales strategies that you use to be effective.
I think if you don't have sales tactics down, you shouldn't be hired. So I think we spend a lot less time on sales tactics. I mean, we sort of go through high level, how to prioritize a territory, how to decompose a target. But I think that, if you're hired at Percolate, either for mid-market or enterprise, you should have a developed understanding of how to run your business. In terms of training, I mean, I believe in speaking the language of the customer. I think that's what works best. So there's a lot of mechanical things that we train on early on, right? The deck, the demo, overcoming objections, good discovery questions to ask, right? How to lead the conversation toward the close. How to leverage conversations that you're having within an organization to weave your way through the hierarchy of really complex companies, so that you can build influence, build advocacy, build a business case. But to me, where a sales rep falls down is around communicating in the language of the customer, is understanding how they talk about their business. And so we actually include in our world, because marketing is our world, our entire marketing organization in the sales training process to help our sales reps understand how to talk in terms of brand and think about how brands grow, how brands communicate with audiences, so that they can fluidly share client use cases.
So you're saying really get deep into understanding kind of from the customer standpoint, or customer voice, so you can actually speak in a way that they're...
I think one of the things that sales organizations don't do very well is taking the glossy case study that has been created and dumbing it down for a seller so they understand how to communicate it very quickly, almost off the cuff. Here are how my clients are using Percolate.
It's really interesting, and maybe Ed or Jay have some comments on this, but we have this high gloss marketing stuff, which sounds really great, but how does it actually translate into some of the conversations? And how do you kind of take the theoretical or strategic into those tactical situations when you're out in the field actually selling? How to do that in a way that's actually systematic, where you're training? What do you do when you're at USI to kind of get that field information?
Sure.
And just deliver it effectively?
Well, I agree that you definitely have to speak the customer's language, and I think the best way to speak the customer's language obviously is to understand what the customer is trying to obtain, and that all feeds into developing what I call a tailored value proposition, where you understand, okay, Mr. Customer, here's what you're going to get. Here's the quantifiable benefits broken into these 5 buckets. Here's the qualitative benefits. And when you marry that together, it adds up to a big number. And typically, we were trying to sell something where you'd get $10 worth of benefit and it would cost you $1 to get it. Once our salespeople understood how to put a value proposition together, which was pretty in-depth as a business case, we got to a point where there were cases, like that Computer Science Corporation guy, where we went in and said, we'll give you $1 million up front in a check. And he took it in exchange for a 5-year outsourcing contract to service their account. So we got to a point where we would write the check up front. We offered the check 35 times $1 million up front. It was only taken once by that one guy. I wish he did.
So I'll just say, and I think that's right. Like, the two things that a seller needs to get really good at are challenge and impact. Like, what are the discovery questions that you ask when you're talking to a prospect for the first time should be about challenge. Like, what challenges are you facing around these specific areas? And more important than the challenge is the impact. And if you can quantify the impact, that's the best, right? How much is the impact costing you in terms of money, time, energy, resources? And then, so if you've gotten good at challenge and impact, then you've got to get really good at ROI. Like, if you tell a great ROI story, like the story that you tell, you're in great shape, right? Like, then it becomes a no-brainer.
Yeah, it just seems though, it's ironic because we call it sales training, but we do a really bad job in helping reps understand how to speak to that ROI language and how to convey that. I mean, is there anything that you're doing specifically at Workday that kind of comes to mind, or some stories in terms of being able to convey ROI or helping reps to get up to speed and have that type of conversation?
Yeah, so going back to your prior question, I think we're all unique individuals, and each sales rep that comes on board has a different need. So you manage people in different ways depending on their strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's part of the process you have your people go through, is identify strengths, weaknesses, so you can coach them in certain ways. But we have what's called an inside-out value proposition. So for publicly traded companies, there's a lot of data out there. And before we have the first meeting or presentation, we have a coach or somebody that's asked us to come in, and we'll validate some data points with them around our value proposition and fine-tune that based on feedback from those folks. So we don't go in and pitch product, pitch feature functionality. We talk about business value, business impact. Without that, you'll never get a project funded.
So I kind of want to move on, and you have a bunch of reps. They're all over the country. They're expanding quickly. Sometimes it's hard to keep a bunch of enterprise reps kind of corralled, so to speak. You almost feel like you're herding the cats. What do you do to kind of keep the team cohesive? What do you do around sales culture? Not company culture, but specifically around sales culture.
It is hard. One of the mistakes we made in 2014 was trying to build offices with brand new people in faraway markets. And I learned the hard way that it's much better to take lead by example leaders, homegrown, and move them into these markets, which I did, and it's worked much better. And so you've got these people who have experienced the culture that we created and are so proud of at headquarters in New York, and have moved them to Austin, San Francisco, LA.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because there's a lot of folks that say, well, I need to expand to, say, Boston or San Francisco or wherever in the country, and they'll just hire local sales talent over there and think it's just going to automatically grow. That's kind of really interesting.
I mean, we believe deeply in our culture. Like it's to our core. We've got a values statement that we as an executive team spend a lot of time thinking about and then communicating to the organization. And so, yeah, it's difficult to hire someone in Boston who's never spent much time with me and with Percolate in New York, and hope that they build the same culture there. Beyond that, though, I mean, I think there are certain things that you can do, right? As you're building big teams in other areas, not everybody comes from New York, and you can't expect the person that you've sent there to continue to be everybody's right-hand man. But so we've got everyone piping in for meetings on Monday mornings, meetings on Friday afternoons, sharing the best practices. Every office has a video, has an TV screen with video connection.
What about motivation? What do you do to kind of keep folks up? As we all know, I mean, sales has its ups and downs. How do you keep everyone kind of up, so to speak?
So what I do is I have a virtual team, and every week we're on a call together talking about what they accomplished the week before, what they got going this week, and by nature sales folks are competitive, and so it helps to energize the competitive spirit. If he's got 10 meetings next week, I want to catch up with him.
Out of curiosity, where do you have reps? Just so we get perspective.
So the current job is regional, so it's New York, but before I came here, I was all over the Northeast, down into Philly, up through Maine.
Wow.
So it was a short plane ride, but we weren't flying around to meet every week. So it was on the phone talking about metrics, right? Metrics driven. Your number one thing is, do salespeople, are they in it for the money, right? So metrics drive results. They drive the numbers, and I think instead of the whip, it's more of, hey, if he's got 10 meetings and he's got this pipeline, I better catch up, or I better exceed him, or do better. So I think there's self-pressure that guys put on each other. And then we made an effort and an invest. Fortunately, in the position I've been in, we've got partners all around us that want to spend time with us. So they're willing to fund dinners and events and things like that. So we would make sure once a month or once a quarter, we would have some kind of event where we brought the guys together, whether it was a ball game or a dinner or something like that. So to build the camaraderie.
Ed,
No, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, Ed, you have a really interesting perspective, because you had your own startup in many ways, and then you went to this Fortune 100 company.
Right.
How different was that, just in terms terms of a sales organization?
Phenomenally different. It was a good thing that I had started with IBM and HP in my earlier career. Then I went to a startup and then sold to Johnson Controls. And 2 weeks after the sale, they said, hey, we want you to run our business in North and South America. And one of the things that we noticed very quickly is our small company culture was everybody sells. When we got into Johnson Controls, it was divided into we manage, they sell. And we had meetings where we brought everybody together and said, no, everybody sells. Everybody has a responsibility to cause good things to happen across the goal line. And it took a while to get that culture through. But once we started to make headway, we really started to improve the financial performance of that business unit.
So I interrupted you before.
No, not at all. I was just going to say that you were talking about sort of how do you keep people motivated? You got to fucking inspire them. Like you got to sell them the vision constantly, right? Especially in a case like mine and yours. Perhaps mine more than yours because you're further along than we are. But like you got to.
You'll get there someday. You're getting there.
We will. But you got to sell them the vision. You got to get them excited about what's happening next for them personally, for us as a company, for this industry, right? How are we revolutionizing the industry? What will you be able to say to a future employer about your time spent at Percolate? I want people to think about that every day, all the time. And so we think about that as an organization and have sales reps from across the globe, right? We've got 6 offices, 5 of them here, 1 of them in London, presenting on Monday mornings. Things that are happening out there in the world that we think might be important for everyone to hear.
Yeah, it's really good, kind of getting like some of the information from the field. We always talk about the stuff that's happening in our day-to-day when we're selling. That's really interesting and maybe inspiring to actually move the needle in the way that we're managing and closing deals and getting that information back into a high-growth organization.
You know, one of the value statements that was on our wall we struggled with when we were thinking about coming up with 10 and we were thinking about like, what should this value statement be? We wanted to communicate your life's work is done at Percolate. And so in that meeting, my colleague and I both had children and we said, well, that's our life's work. Our life's work is not being done at Percolate. Our life's work is being done at home. So how can we sort of soften that a bit? And we came up with more than a job. And so I think we want everyone, and this sort of goes to thinking in terms of profit and ensuring that everyone in the organization is thinking in terms of profit or thinking like an owner. We want everyone thinking that way. We want everyone thinking this is more than a job. This is my life. This is my career. I spend most of my time here. How can I be a collaborator? How can I win? You said sort of winning is one of the sort of key tenets. How can we win at every single thing that we do?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people never really consider or make the equation of sales, people, and heart. So if you're going to be successful in this type of role, doing that enterprise sale and trying to bang down the doors of these big companies, you got to have something. You got to have passion, and money is obviously a large part of that motivation. There's also that innate part.
Can I tell a great story?
Yeah,
it's a great story. So Rocky 3. Everyone see Rocky? Rocky 3.
Yeah.
Rocky 3, and Rocky has sort of come up through the ranks, and he's he's now an established fighter, and he's been the champion for I guess many years. And the scene in Rocky 3 is when Rocky and Mickey are sitting in Mickey's room in Rocky's mansion, and Rocky has just learned that Mickey's been carrying him for the last couple of years, putting him in front of lesser fighters, people who aren't going to give him a hard time. And so he's yelling at Mickey and he says, I feel like a fraud. I feel like, I'm lying to myself. How could you have done this to me? And Mickey says, because the worst thing that can happen to a fighter happened to you. You became civilized. And it's true. The same thing happens to really successful sales professionals. And so you talk about heart, you talk about passion. I'm looking for people who win. And I don't care if you've been in sales for 10 or 20 or 30 years, you've come from Workday or IBM, or you're at a startup that is just getting funded for the first time. You've got to come with grit. You've got to come with heart. That sells.
Absolutely. Anyone want to I'm going to dive into like nuts and bolts now. They may not be necessarily the most fun part, but really talk about that sales operations part, because you're growing really quickly. So if you don't have something in place to figure out, well, how are we growing, what's going on, keeping everyone on the same page, there needs to be an infrastructure, or what they call the sales stack. So do you have any thoughts in terms of tool set or process that you use, and metrics or measurements that you use to kind of keep everything aligned from a sales organization? Okay, want to kick it off?
Sure. So it's kind of interesting. Our organization started out with sales operations folks really running the sales organization. So there was a lot of process, a lot of rigor put into how we evolved and how we grew. We just brought in a new president who's really more of a field sales general, to kind of look at new ways to grow and inspire and sell and build market share. So the heart of our organization has really been founded upon sales discipline and sales operations.
So we are migrating in that direction. I think perhaps based on what we read about you guys, and we do aspire to be just like Workday. Process is everything, right? We talked earlier, I think I did, about decomposition of target out to its smallest component parts, and how do you define productivity for yourself on a daily basis. And so of course there are tools that you use, Salesforce being one of them. But I think the one thing that I try to communicate to all sellers in terms of training and thinking about how to build their own business in a process-oriented way, outside of metrics, which we measure for them and we hope that they measure for themselves, is choreographing the entire experience. That there, from the point at which an SDR reaches out to schedule a meeting to the time in which you are renewing a contract or expanding that contract, there are so many opportunities to interact with a prospect or a client that can positively or negatively impact the outcome of a deal. You've got to choreograph everything. And what I mean by everything is, what do you say in the first call? How do you leave that first voicemail? How do you leave the second voicemail if they've not responded? When you're in the lobby of the office of the person you're trying to meet with, what are you gleaning from your surroundings? What are you talking to the receptionist about? When the person who's coming down to meet you comes down to get you and brings you up in the elevator to meet with a group of people who are already sitting in a conference room, and she asks you about Percolate, do you begin your pitch right there? Do you say, hang on, I don't want to steal my own thunder, let's wait? When the technology fails, you know, the projector, the thing that you're using to...
There's never any demo failure. Never.
And the point is, every single thing offers you an opportunity to either positively or negatively impact the outcome of the deal. Big or small, not everyone is the same. But you've got to be disciplined enough to choreograph the entire fucking experience. Don't leave anything to chance. Don't wing anything, right? And so when you talk about training, you talk about new hire, development, this is what we talk about. How do you prepare for all of those moments? How do you know how to react when technology fails? What do you talk about?
Yeah, you're smiling. You have a...
Well, one of the themes when we talk about harnessing your customer force is reciprocal trust. There's nothing that unlocks productivity more than when two people really trust one another. I mean, it's just perfect. And if you really want to uncork the productivity of your sales force, you create an environment where they can trust. They can trust what deals they have, they can trust what territories they have, they can trust what they're going to be paid, they can trust that their judgment isn't going to be questioned. So as much as you can inject trust into your sales force, that's when you really unlock productivity, whether it's with the customer or the sales force.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes like a force multiplier. You do the right things in the course of the sales, every sales conversation. You're just building up that trust well, and they become an advocate for you. Right? They talk about those three great stories that you introduced in your presentation.
I was just going to say, just on the trust thing, we talk a lot about at Percolate establishing yourself as a thought leader so that you earn the right to become a thought partner. And what I mean by that is, everyone has a personal thesis. If I asked all of you to tell me why you work for the company you work for, you might give me the background and why you joined that company or started that company. That's your personal thesis. And my suggestion to you is that you think about your personal thesis, because it's the first 30 seconds it's like a first impression. When you're going around that conference table and everyone in the room, your prospect and you, is introducing themselves, it's your opportunity to establish yourself as a thought leader. And so figure out how to tie in your experience, make it up, like embellish, be your own best PR person, come up with a kick-ass personal thesis that establishes you as a thought leader, as someone that they should listen to around the very specific thing that you're talking to them about, so that you've earned the right to be their thought partner through the process. Right? Of course, you're trying to find a champion, and you're doing other things along the way, but you do want to be their thought partner. It's sort of like the way I think about recruiting. The recruiter inside of an organization is not necessarily responsible for closing the candidate on joining the company. That is the hiring manager's responsibility. I agree with you on that. But the recruiter should establish themselves as a thought leader around the space, around marketing, around Percolate, around all the things that this person is most interested in, so that as they're going through the process, being interviewed, or a prospect is going through the process of thinking about who they should choose for whatever service you're providing, they're coming to you, like you're their thought partner.
Let me make one point on the HR piece. I just want to be clear. Great HR people are irreplaceable. But when 10 people are fighting for one position and an HR person corrals 10 people for months, that is not right. That is not right. Be straight with people. Those are good HR people. But one position, 10 people are tied up, missing out on other opportunities. That's when I say it's the P&L manager responsibility, who has time pressure to make a hire and make something happen. Now, if they make timely decisions and treat people fairly, I'm all for the HR program. But when you tie people up, and we've all heard about that, for months and mislead them, that is not right ever.
We're kind of coming to the close of our panel, so I want to give each one of you just your three parting shots, things that you want to leave with the audience tonight to just think about in terms of their organization, whether they're part of a growing organization or they're actually leading a growing organization. So I'll start off with that.
I guess the big thing that I think about, I wrote a book called The Purpose is Profit. I believe profit is a significant incentive. It's not the only thing. But let's face it, everybody goes to work every day to make money. And if everybody's treated equally in terms of their ability to make money, and they have a lot of trust in the system, I think you can really unlock some powerful stuff.
I would agree with you. Have passion around what you're doing every day. It's contagious. Your customers feel it. Your associates feel it. Folks that are supporting your campaigns to sell into clients feel it. So be passionate about what you're doing. Otherwise, find something else to do. And then to add to the everybody's a salesperson in our company, everybody's a salesperson and a customer service person. We're all measured, we're comped based on how our customers respond to their satisfaction with our software service that we deliver. So everybody's a salesperson and a customer service person, and that's really important to keep customers happy, especially in our business model and those that are in a subscription or SaaS-based model. We want renewals, and that's really what builds the revenue angle this way.
Those are great points. I guess the only thing I would add from my perspective in terms of what you should all be thinking about is what you stand for, right? What do you stand for? What does your company stand for? Do your prospects, do your clients know what you stand for? What is your brand about? Like, what are the brand pillars? What are your brand pillars? And are you on brand? Is your company on brand? Or are you on brand in every communication with your client? At Percolate, I won't tell you all of our value statements, but we've got 3 things that we stand for as an organization outside of sort of Percolate and communicating with audiences and marketing. But internally, we stand for a culture of winning everything, right? Choreographing the experience, ensure that whatever you do, you win. A culture of collaboration. We want to hire collaborative people who share best practices, who are willing to fight with and for each other, who are interested in all of our success. And then we are a culture of growth, and that's why I'm proud of the title, because it's one, ambiguous, and sort of growth can mean lots of things to lots of different people, but we're a company who is growing, and when you're growing, there are lots of things that everyone has to accept. They have to be adaptable, they have to be prepared to pivot in a moment's notice. They've got to understand that we are going to change, and change will continue to happen over time. And so if you come up with sort of principles or values or things that you stand for, I think you're making clear to yourself, to your employees, and to your clients what they can expect of you.
That's really great thoughts to end our panel with. I do want to ask a question later on, but afterwards around sales compensation and timing customer success. But we'll get to that at another point. But I do want to give just a few questions from the audience, actually, just to kind of close us out. So, gentleman in the white shirt.
If you can all talk about sales tools that you guys use in your organizations, whether CRM, cadences, whatever, stuff like that, and also what's the process of the training of sales that you guys go through? I think you mentioned Miller Hyman.
Correct.
Do you guys use any other sales training, or is it something that's ingrown in-house that you guys do yourself?
So the question was any sort of key sales tools that are used, as well as is there a kind of a training methodology used?
So we use Salesforce, we use Tout app. For our SDRs and mid-market sellers, we use gamification software.
Which one?
I forget which one. I can get it. Rivalry.
Yeah, Rivalry.
Boomerang.
Boomerang's great.
Yeah. In terms of, what was your second question was around?
Sales training methodology.
So
is
we-
it ingrown, or is it Miller Hyman?
Yeah, no, so we subscribe to lots of different philosophies. The first is strategic selling, so we speak in terms of economic buyer, user buyer, technical buyer. We force everyone to read it, and we test them on the challenger set, challenging people to think and see things from a slightly different perspective. 2 great books, in addition to yours, make sure you get them, that I would suggest everybody reads. The first is by Mark Roberge, who founded HubSpot. It's called the Sales Acceleration Formula. It's awesome. And the other is called Whale Hunting by Tom Searcy. And it's an awesome story. It's an awesome book. It's sort of a metaphor. It's actually about whale hunting, but the idea is that you're going after big deals and you're creating sort of SWAT teams with a shaman at the front of the boat, surveying an ocean before he, and his team go in for the kill. It's a really great book. And
it is that interesting compared to a lot of other sales books I've read. It's actually really
and so as we think about sort of the separation of enterprise and mid-market, that's sort of sales acceleration formula is more for the mid-market, whale hunting more for the enterprise.